Now, I think we can find that theme of walking with God in many, many places in the Bible. But Psalm 23 is one of my favourites. In fact, it's a lot of people's favourites. And it's sometimes known as the Shepherd Psalm. It begins, "The Lord is my shepherd." It's written by David. And of course, David had a big insight into what being a shepherd was because he was a shepherd. He had been a shepherd through his youth. And he says, first of all, that once we're in this good relationship with God, once we know Jesus, then the Lord will provide for us. And the psalm opens that the Lord will lead me by green pastures, he will lead me by still waters, and he will make me lie down and rest. You know, three things the Lord gives there: food, drink, and rest. The Lord provides for us. The good shepherd provides what the sheep needs, and that's his job. The job of the shepherd is to make sure that the sheep grows up with everything that they need in order to make their good progress. But then David goes on and he talks about the fact that the Lord restores my soul. You see, sometimes we can get so attracted to the food and the drink and the rest that actually we don't really feel like moving on. But God has to sometimes remind us we're on a journey. There's still somewhere to go, and we've got to get up and we've got to get moving. And so I think sometimes the sheep might look up at the shepherd and say, "Really? Are we moving again?" And then the shepherd will say, "Yeah, we're moving. Come on, let's get going." Sometimes the shepherd has to untangle the legs of the sheep as well. The Lord restores my soul. He renews my spirit. Isn't that great? That we have a God who not only provides what we need to go through this life, he deals with our soul and our spirit as well. He gives us what we need to get back up. Whether it's because we're tired, whether it's because we're depressed, whatever it might be, he says, come and continue this journey. I will lead you along the paths of righteousness. I love that the shepherd leads the sheep don't lead the shepherd. We have a God who leads us, and he's quite happy for us to let him lead us because he knows what he's doing. But he says, I will lead you along the paths of righteousness, and I love this, for my name's sake. Now, why is God saying that? Well, I think he's saying, I will take the responsibility. I have set you on this path. I'm the one who began this process in you. I will see it through to completion. It's almost as if he's saying, if you fail, then I've failed. And God can't fail. And what he's saying is, you won't fail. Stay on the path of God and he will get you to where you need to be. And God encourages us to walk. And why does he encourage us? Because the psalm goes on to say that there are times in life we may go through some scary times. It says, sometimes we go through the valley of the shadow of death. Now, it doesn't just mean death. It might mean scary places where we're going to be in danger. And again, I think the sheep sometimes will look up at the shepherd and say, really? You expect me to go through there? That doesn't look much fun to do that. But the shepherd says this. He says, we can do this. Why? Two reasons. My rod and my staff will comfort you as we go. What is the rod and what is the staff? Well, the staff is generally seen as that thing that had a long hook on the end which gently was coaxed, and so the sheep could be directed, because sheep notoriously don't do what they're told. So the shepherd has to use that maybe to gently coax them. Now, some people have asked, well, what's the rod for? Is it like to give the sheep a little tap in case they're being a bit stubborn? We could think that sometimes, because we often think about the donkey needing the stick sometimes and the carrot sometimes. But in this context, I don't think that's what we're being told. Because what the verse goes on to say is in the next verse that the Lord sets a table before us, even in the midst of our enemies. Now, what does a table look like for a sheep? Well, I think it's probably just like a load of hay there in a kind of feeding trough. But there's the enemies, there's the wolves. And the sheep, again, is probably going to look up at the shepherd and say, really, you want me to go over there and eat that while they're there? And the shepherd will say, yes, because I have my rod with me. Don't worry about them, because I am with you. Now, isn't it interesting that when Jesus talked about being a shepherd, he said that the hired hand, the person who's doing a part-time shepherding job, who doesn't really care for the sheep, as soon as trouble comes, he will disappear. But what did David say? Every time a sheep came and was attacked by a lion or a bear, I would take my rod and I would beat that lion or bear until they disappeared. The Lord would give them into my hand. We have a God who looks after us. We have a God who will use his rod to ensure that we can eat and live in peace despite the enemies that surround us all over. What does the Lord say our destination is? Finally, for the sheep, he says this. He says that we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What does it look like for a sheep to enter heaven? Well, I don't suppose our heaven will be pastures full of other sheep, but I think the sheep is thinking to himself, really? Am I going there? This is fantastic. Have we made the end of the journey? And the shepherd is saying, you've made it. You got to the end. Two things I want to remind you of. Did you notice how many times the sheep checked in with the shepherd? It isn't in the psalm, but I think if we want to make it to the end, if we want to be encouraged that we can get to where the destination God has said, checking in with the shepherd regularly is a very good idea. What does that mean for us? It means we're in constant prayer. We're offering ourselves to God daily and saying, Lord, guide me, lead me, teach me, encourage me, provide for me. Do all those things that you would do for the sheep. And here's the second thing to notice. The shepherd never left the sheep. Did you notice that? The shepherd was there all the time. Every step of the journey, the shepherd was there. Why did the sheep endure to get to the destination? Was it because of fear? Was it because of threat? Was it because of punishment? No, the psalm says this, your goodness and mercy brought me to this place. Your goodness and mercy, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.